Our top story, India has trashed Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's remarks blaming India for blocking peace efforts. The Indian Foreign Ministry sources have termed the Pakistani allegations as baseless. The Foreign Ministry sources told WION that the remarks by the Pakistani Foreign Minister about Ms. Swaraj leaving the Foreign Minister's meeting was surprising and unfortunate. It should be noted that she was neither the first one nor the one who left. Nor the only one who left the meeting. After being snubbed by India, Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi had accused India of hampering the spirit of the SAARC. Listen in to what he had to say.
मेरी बात नहीं हुई और जेस्चर तो पॉजिटिव मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि वो बीच दौरान उठ गई मीटिंग के, हो सकता है तबीयत नासाज हो, लेकिन ये बड़ा वाजे है कि उनकी मैंने गुफ्तगू बड़े गौर से सुनी और उन्होंने रीजनल कोऑपरेशन की बात की। मेरा सवाल यह है कि रीजनल कोऑपरेशन मुमकिन कैसे होगी जब रीजन वाले मिल बैठने के लिए तैयार हैं और आप उस बैठक में रुकावट हैं। तो मुझे समझाइए इस खित्ते की और इस रीजनल कोऑपरेशन की पेशरफ्त कैसे मुमकिन है।
All right, and of course, Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj also made a strong statement on terrorism threatening peace and stability in South Asia, adding that regional cooperation in South Asia is not possible without an environment of peace and security. And my colleague Siddhant Sibbal is now joining us from the UNGA for more on this. And Siddhant, so essentially we have gone from talks to no talks again, and a very strong snub and rebuttal by India to Pakistan, claiming that we were, subverting the cause of peace.
Well, India not only snubbed Pakistan, Pakistan was isolated at that SAARC meeting because it was not only that Indian minister, the Indian foreign minister left, but also the Afghanistan's foreign minister, he also left early. He left earlier than the Indian foreign minister, but overall, if we look at what happened in the SAARC meeting, it was a disaster from the start. The meeting was to start at 1 p.m. local time and it started at 1:30 and it ended by 3:30, even though it was to end at 4 o'clock. So it shows how most of the members were not interested. It was usual stuff which they wanted to finish as soon as possible. But when it comes to India and Pakistan, we saw the body language. Both the ministers avoided each other. They didn't even look at each other. And we know that how the foreign minister of Pakistan indulged in blame game with India. He came out of that meeting and lashed out at India and India's external affairs minister. On India's external affairs minister, we have heard what he said. He said that she left in between of the meeting, in the middle of the meeting. That was not the case. She presented her statement and left, and India was being represented throughout the meeting by India's foreign secretary. And on India, he was very critical. He said that how India is betraying the spirit of SAARC, and he even claimed that all the members of SAARC, other countries, are eager to revive SAARC, the entire grouping, but that was not the case because none of the members who came out after the meeting spoke to media. Only the Pakistani foreign minister was eager to speak to media and use that platform to lash out at India, but India, of course, snubbing the Pakistani minister here in New York.
Right. And so the question then, Siddhant, of course, is that how do other countries now see the future of SAARC, considering that we have had a stalemate between these two countries? And of course, also tell us what unfolded at the BRICS ministerial meet later.
Well, SAARC seems to be a dead grouping now because India is gradually moving towards BIMSTEC. We saw the BIMSTEC summit being hosted in Nepal earlier this year, and the Nepal's Prime Minister spoke at the UNGA yesterday, and he mentioned BIMSTEC, saying that how his country hosted that summit. But overall, if we look at the future of SAARC, it looks dim, particularly because of the rivalry between India and Pakistan, and that rivalry has now moved to tensions between Islamabad and New Delhi from the Indian subcontinent to here in New York. And tomorrow at this time, India's External Affairs Minister will be speaking. Later on, the Pakistani minister will be speaking. We know what India is going to speak. India is going to speak about cooperation, peace and development in the region, while Pakistan is going to go solo by raking up Kashmir. On BRICS, India raised up the issue of connectivity and the most important issue, the issue of terrorism. India has been raising the issue of terrorism in almost all the platforms. So clearly a very important meeting, the BRICS meeting and SAARC meeting, and also the IPSA meeting.
Right, Siddhant. Thanks very much indeed for joining us with all the latest, and of course pointing out that the future of SAARC certainly looks dismal at this point. Well, let's move on to some other news now. And in a historic judgment, women of all ages will be allowed in Kerala's renowned Sabrimala temple. The Supreme Court has said today in a majority decision led by the Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra, with one dissenting voice only, surprisingly, from the woman judge Indu Malhotra, doing away with the centuries-old tradition where women of menstrual age were restricted from entering the temple, as it is presided by a deity, Lord Ayyappa, who is considered to be celibate. Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra, said that devotion cannot be subjected to discrimination and a patriarchal notion cannot be allowed to trump equality in devotion. The head priest of the Sabrimala today said, "We are disappointed but accept the Supreme Court verdict on the entry of women."
Now it's 2018, so the women should be given the equal right as men. So even they should be allowed to go to Sabrimala. I think it's a right decision by the Supreme Court.
I am a believer of the Ayyappa. I will not go to the Sabrimala temple because of my belief that Ayyappa Swami is brahmachari. So I won't go to Sabrimala.
All right, Anishta, my colleague, is now joining us for more reactions from what the reactions have been coming in from the government as well as from people. And there's been a positive response from the women, but this is, of course, a landmark judgment. What are you picking up?
Well, as far as the ground sentiment here is concerned, there is no overwhelming joy or support to the Supreme Court verdict. In fact, all during the years, over a decade that this debate has been going on before the court, the opinion on ground has also been very, very divided. But if you look at those who are the devout followers of Ayyappa Swami, especially the regions that are around the Sabrimala Hill Shrine, I'm currently at Irumali, which is the closest pilgrimage center to the Sabrimala Hill Shrine. Here there are Ayyappa Swami temples. One you see right behind me, where you see the pilgrims coming in and offering obeisance before they head to the Holy Hill Shrine. So here the opinion, at least from whatever we have gathered, is overwhelmingly against the Supreme Court verdict. They believe that women should not be allowed inside the Ayyappa Swami temple at Sabrimala Hill Shrine when they are in their menstruating age, which is between 10 and 50 years. And this cuts across the genders, whether it is men or women. All of them seem to favor the centuries-old tradition that has lasted, and they feel that this has nothing to do with gender discrimination, as girls below the age of 10 are allowed and women above the age of 50 are allowed. So it is not about gender discrimination. It is the choice of the deity, and that is what is respected by the devotees, and that is the reason why women who are in their menstrual age do not visit the temple. So yes, there is not much excitement or support. In fact, many of them seemed very, very disappointed with the Supreme Court verdict. They went on to say that this is a matter of faith. It cannot be governed by logic, and the Supreme Court runs on logic and on the Constitution, and when it comes to faith, you cannot really expect for it to match every other tenet of the Constitution. So yes, as far as the ground sentiment is concerned, it is quite the dampener, but one has to admire the fact that this is a landmark judgment, not just when it comes to the Sabrimala temple shrine, but also in the larger picture of women being ostracized when they are in their menstruation period.
And well, we are joined from Moscow by Lucy Taylor, our Moscow correspondent, who joins us to talk more about this. Lucy, thanks very much for talking to us this evening. Now, there has been much worry and focus on, Russian meddling in elections in the US, allegations of hacking. How true is this worldwide concern of the latest malware that seems to be almost impossible to eradicate?
Yes, well, as you were saying, this all comes from this internet security company called ESET, which says it's identified this new virus just in the last few days. It's calling it LoJax. It says it's attributing it to the Russian military intelligence services, as you've said. And the reason that this is so apparently impossible to eradicate is because it targets this very core critical component of a computer, which was actually originally installed in some computers as anti-theft software. So it's deliberately created to outlast things like Windows being reinstalled on a computer, or even the hard drive being replaced completely. Because, of course, that's exactly what a thief would do if they physically stole your computer from your house or office. They would try to replace those things, replace the hard drive, reinstall the software to try and get away from you, when actually this software exists to help the user track the location and track down their computer that's been stolen. But because it's so hardy, this malware apparently can infect this critical component, and it means that the virus itself can outlast those things.
Right.
So if your computer gets infected, even if you replace the hard drive, it can still be compromised. It can also compromise other computers on the same network.
Right. And then, Lucy, as the world goes into a tizzy about how to get rid of this malware, how is Moscow reacting to this?
Moscow hasn't responded to this as yet directly, but this is a pattern of a number of other cyber attacks which have been attributed to Moscow in the past, and they have always denied all of them. They deny the existence of this unit at all, and they say it falls into a pattern of Russophobia. This is a common phrase that we hear from the Russian government, which tries to say that other parts of the world, particularly the US and Europe, are very against Russia and spread a narrative of Russia being against the rest of the world. It is also probably fair to say that Russia is not the only country that is engaging in this kind of cyber attack. We've had attacks attributed to China, to Iran, even to North Korea, and also to the US and, for example, the UK as well. Both of those have mentioned their own cyber attack capabilities in the past and suggested that they might be using them offensively in future. Donald Trump even relaxed the rules last month in the US about how cyber weapons can be employed. So it's not just Russia, but Russia denies this completely.
Right. So, Lucy, then a very, before I wrap, a quick question, in tune with what you were saying. So are the next wars then going to be fought in cyberspace, as we are seeing so many counter allegations, the latest being, of course, Mr. Trump saying that the Chinese are doing this as well, meddling in elections through various mediums, and also, of course, an interesting statement that you made that Russia thinks this is some sort of Russia phobia in the US and otherwise.
Yeah, so far that threat of whether the next wars will be carried out in cyberspace seems to be more hypothetical than real. But there have been a big pattern of different attacks which are kind of coordinating alongside wars on the ground. So, for example, there was a big attack in 2017 which targeted Ukraine. And, of course, there's a big conflict on the ground there in Ukraine, a very deadly physical war happening there, mostly between Ukraine and Russia. And this attack, you may have heard of it, it was called NotPetya, targeted Ukraine originally, but then because of the nature of this virus that was being spread, it spread to other parts of the world as well. It spread to the US, UK and others. So is perhaps a weapon that can be employed during war rather than the new cyber war front line in itself.
Right.
But there's also another way that these are being used in terms of espionage, stealing theft, and also, as you mentioned, potentially hacking elections. Not just China, but Russia, again, has been very much accused of doing that, as you may know, from 2016, the US presidential election there. And the US intelligence agencies have been warning that might happen again in the midterms, which are coming up in the US in November.
Right, absolutely. Lucy Taylor, thanks very much for joining us live from Moscow. Appreciate it. Israel's Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, is at it again, holding up a poster board map of an area near Tehran before the world leaders at the UN. Netanyahu accused Iran of keeping a secret atomic warehouse near the capital, Tehran, despite the 2015 deal, which was meant to keep it from obtaining nuclear weapons. Netanyahu's alleged disclosure came 4 months after Israel announced the existence of what it said was a half-ton of Iranian nuclear documents obtained by Israeli intelligence. Israel claimed that this proved that Iranian leaders covered up their nuclear weapons programs before signing the nuclear agreement. Iran hasn't acknowledged the alleged seizure. Meanwhile, Iran has trashed Israeli Prime Minister's claims of a secret atomic warehouse as well.
Today, I'm disclosing for the first time that Iran has another secret facility in Tehran, a secret atomic warehouse for storing massive amounts of equipment and material from Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. In May, we exposed the site of Iran's secret atomic archive. It's right here, in the Shorabad district of Tehran. Today, I'm revealing the site of a second facility, Iran's secret atomic warehouse. It's right here, in the Turkuzabad district of Tehran, just 3 miles away.
Exhibiting some photographs of Google Street View, today the Israeli showman claimed that discovered new nuclear facilities in Iran. This is yet another false story. It is not surprising, as lying is in his DNA. Instead of such fabrications, he should stop threatening Iran with nuclear annihilation.
All right, our West Asia Bureau Chief Daniele Pagani is now joining us from Amman for more on this. And now, Daniele, Mr. Netanyahu said that Iran's nuclear weapons, he actually made it the cornerstone of his speech at the UN, as said Mr. Trump, of course. But other than what he showed in images, what is the real evidence that he has? And does it have something to do with the fact that Israel has been a very vocal and chief critic of this deal right from the beginning?
Other than the picture that he showed at the United Nations General Assembly, we, meaning the public domain, have very little as an evidence about these facilities. I did what Mr. Netanyahu said, and I did check on Google Earth these kind of facility. Yes, there is a building. Yes, the building resembles the picture of Netanyahu, but that doesn't give any kind of evidence about what is contained in the building. Furthermore, we have at least 2 voices belonging to the United States intelligence community saying that they were aware about this building, and they say that it contains majorly cabinet documents and documents maybe related to nuclear activities, but nothing that can be considered a threat or a component in order to build a nuclear warehouse. Of course, Israel has all the interest in perpetrating the narrative of Iran hiding nuclear facilities, nuclear documents, and nuclear equipment, because Israel is spearheading the diversified coalition against Iran and against the nuclear deal signed in 2015.
Right. And Daniela, then, of course, the Iranians, as we know, have denied all of this and, have opened up another part of the debate saying that why is Israel not coming up out in the open about their own nuclear assets? But where does this really leave the Iranian deal? Because, the European Union and the United States are split wide open on this.
I'm afraid that the Iran nuclear deal, despite all the efforts made by the European partners and Iran, will not last long. Iran it's not anymore bound to respect it because this was a deal signed by all the components, and the United States walking away effectively makes the deal null and void. Iran is trying to find a way out of this, but I'm afraid that the Iran nuclear deal could collapse at any moment, and this will be a major risk because in Iran working without and outside the frame of a nuclear deal, which says clearly that Iran needs to refrain in weaponizing uranium, could be truly a danger for the area where I live in, West Asia, but also for the entire world.
Well, absolutely, Daniel Pagani. Thanks very much indeed for joining us with your perspective on what this really means for the world community.